So welcome. Today we have Gesa, Jäger and Hansjörg Weißbrich from Germany to talk about the editing process of the Netflix miniseries Unorthodox. And there's already a lot being written and said about this series, and it's a global hit, you could call it. But nothing has been said really about the editing, so we will focus on this today. And first of all, I would really like to ask you about how did you become an editor, or how did you find out that you wanted to become a film editor?
Basically, I was studying music and French to become a teacher at the time, and I spent a year in Paris working as an assistant teacher for German there. And by the time I had the possibility to work in a small cinema as a projectionist, so I spent all my evenings in the small cinemas in Paris, and that led me to give up my ambitions to become a teacher and get into the film business afterwards. And at the time there weren't that many possibilities to study editing. The normal way was just doing second assistant, first assistant, and then finally become an editor yourself. So that's what I did, and I worked around I think 3 years as an assistant editor, doing some short films in between, and then I managed to get my first feature-length film as an editor, and yeah, then from then on, it turned out to be a huge success, by the way, and it turned out to be the first collaboration with Hans Christian Schmid, with whom I keep working on up to today. So that was one major collaboration so far, and yeah, I was lucky, I think, a little bit, and but I worked a lot, I must say. I worked constantly, I would say, because I like it, and it was the best decision in my life to do that. Yeah, I'm still enjoying it.
Fantastic. And you, Gesa?
I think I took quite a detour while discovering what I wanted to do. I fell in love with editing quite early, I think. When I finished school, I was an Praktikant, an apprentice at a German local TV station, and we were kind of the first VJs. I think later on it was called VJ, but they were not yet invented. So we went out with a camera, shot our own 30-second news clips, and then we edited them, wrote the texts, and we were editing on those 3 machine tape editing places. I don't know if you started that way as well. And the first time I realized what editing was doing was when I did some kind of really boring, cheesy news thing, and I took a picture of a flag, and somewhere there was music, and I just put the music under that flag, and it became like really, really cheesy. But I realized what the magic of editing was, like combining stuff, creating something else by combining, and that never left my head, even though at that time I didn't know that was a proper job. I just thought that was one step of another job. So I took a detour, and I studied history for a few years, even discovering that was really boring to me because it was not emotional at all. And was an apprentice at some film sets, but the sets themselves were not like, I didn't like the place. There were too many people. I was distracted all the time. I think I need the editing room as a safe space in a way. Yeah, then I was a trainee for 2.5 years at another TV station. And during that training, they lent us to different film editors throughout Germany and to film schools as an assistant. Like, we didn't earn money really, but we had the chance to discover all the German film schools, and I fell in love with the HFF Potsdam. So I applied there, started studying editing at 28, finished at 33 in 2013, and I had the big luck to finish my studies with a film that became like a small festival hit, and that kind of opened the door for me to do film.
How did you get to work together on this project? Did you know each other before, or how did that work?
Well, in fact, we knew each other before. We even did some talk together 2 years ago or something, but we never worked together. With this series, they originally planned to have 3 editors, but then we decided to only have 2 editors and split the episodes, not to get too many people involved. And Gesa, in fact, was a suggestion from the production. I was on board because I worked with Maria before on her film Stefan Zweig, Farewell to Europe. Then I thought it was a brilliant idea because I like the work I knew from Gesa, and eventually we met, the 3 of us, Maria, Gesa, and me, and it was very clear that we would do that together because we had a similar approach, and we liked each other, and yeah, it turned out to be great. Yeah, it was a really great team, I must say.
Maybe I can tell the story of how they called me for the project, because the production assistant, I think, called me, and I thought it was a really interesting project. I kind of dig the story. I think at that point I didn't yet know Maria was going to do it, but I said, okay, it sounds like there needs to be more than 1 editor, and who's already on the project? I asked her, and she said, yeah, Hansjörg Weißbrich is about to sign his contract. And I was like, yeah, I know him. Because I think at some point, I think when I was studying editing, I found out that Hansjörg edited almost all of the German films of the early 2000s that I really, really liked. So I always felt like there was some kind of bond, I don't know. Yes, I was really happy to work with him, and also with Maria.
The structure of the whole series, how did you work with this? So Hansjörg, I think maybe you can tell us how you started with the whole process. And there is this flashback structure. How did you work with this? Was this already in the scripts? Was it written like this? How did you go about this?
Yeah, basically, a lot of critics mentioned that they are 2 basic storylines, like the Berlin part and the Williamsburg part, but in fact it's 3 storylines because it's the present and the past. So we have those flashbacks from the past, but we also have a parallel storyline between what Esti is experiencing and what Yankee and Moishe are experiencing, or respectively the community in Williamsburg when she left. So it's basically 3 storylines we had to put together. And basically, this was in the script as well, of course, with the 3 layers, but sometimes the order was quite different. And I I think it was one of the major challenges in editing the series to find the best possible way to combine those storylines to create the highest emotional impact on it. And we spent quite some time doing so. But the structure, like the episodes, stayed very much the same. I think that there's just one scene or maybe two, but I think it's just one scene that went into another episode. Mm-hmm. And basically it was within the episodes. And to probably tell a bit how we split the work. It was, I was doing the rough cut during shooting, and then Gesa for all the 4 episodes, because it was shot simultaneously, like all the episodes in one. So after we had that rough cut from the whole show, Gesa came on board and took over episode 2 and 3, and I worked on 1 and 4. And we basically kept that. Of course, we watched each other's episodes and discussed a little bit, but basically we really tried to split the work, to not constantly work on everything. And that turned out, I think, to be the best plan. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can say something about it, Gesa.
I just wanted to show the wall. I think that might be a good moment to show it. There it is. So we worked with this kind of still walls. We had, of course, one wall for every episode. Put it over here. So the past is circled red. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Probably not.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. So the past is circled red, and the present is white. So you can see it like from afar how it's put into the episode. And at this point, I think we were reshaping the whole episode. So it's kind of Kraut und Rüben, as we say in German. And I always work with these kind of stills because it helps me to take a step back from the edit and see the structure, like, or being able to see it emotionally in a way. So yeah, we took some time reshaping those episodes, and I was quite impressed by Hansjörg. I'm sorry, I have to fangirl all the time.
I was going to say that as well. I guess you want to point out that I said I don't need that.
Yeah, that's true. In the beginning, I said I would like to have that kind of wall, which was quite some work for the assistants, of course, because they have to print that out and cut it out. And Hansjörg was like, I don't think I need that. And then I think it helped all three also communicating with Maria, with the director, or Anna Winger, the showrunner, to like being able to puzzle and to show what you mean if you say, I'm going to put that here, because you always have to be able to feel that in a way. I don't know. But Hansjörg was always really good in puzzling and rearranging scenes. I was a little slower. Like sometimes Maria and Hansjörg were standing in front of the wall, like pow, 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 pow. And I was behind them. Okay, good. And he sometimes reminded.
And then we have it.
Yeah, and sometimes he reminded a sentence one of my episodes, and was like, but wouldn't it be good to put it here, because before that she says this or that, and that kind of reflects on it. And I was like, okay, yeah, right. It's my episode. I should have had that idea, but yeah, I like it.
So no, it was really funny. It was great to have that wall. I wasn't really aware of that beforehand, I must say. But as Gesa pointed out, it was so helpful to have those little screenshots, and you're so much quicker in thinking and realizing the structure than you are in a timeline. Usually you can have a timeline and you can have different colors for different storylines or something like that. Basically for me it's always important to really watch it, what it will be like, but of course there's a process before where you have those have to think about the structural things in general, and it gives you a very good overview, and also when you you have some scenes missing, you have the cards in your hand, and you can say, oh, let's put it here, let's try it there. It's very very practical and very helpful.
Yeah, I wanted to come back to what you said about, yeah, and then when we work like this with the cars, Hansjörg remembered this sentence at the end, and then we go to a flashback, for example. I really think this is so beautifully done and very, very strong when we go back to something. It's really very well thought, and I wanted to hear a little bit more about this process, about where did you know, like, yes, now it's there, because you mentioned you have been shuffling a lot. How did you know that it was right? When did you know this?
Well, basically, I think it's always a little bit trial and error. Of course, you think about it and think about a line and a connection that might work, but then it turns out to not to work, or to work perfectly. It's I think there is no recipe on it. I try to think everything from the character's perspective. Like in this case, it was very clear. It was Esti's emotional journey. So I tried to think it from her point of view. And but of course there are other things involved, like you can't always do what you want, of course, because maybe when one transition is really great, another consequent transition turns out to be not so good. So you always have to find the best solution for the whole series. And with our series also, it's not only us, the editors, who think about, oh, let's do it like this and this, and then it's done. There are other people involved, so it's also a process to discuss, to let different thoughts come together, or bring different thoughts together, and to always learn more about the material and the story, of course, until you finally decide on what you think is best.
Yeah, and also what resonates best to the audience, of course.
Yes, but this is frankly, this is something I would always first judge from my perception of it. I don't know. I find it difficult to disconnect yourself from what you are feeling, and try to guess or suppose or assume what the audience is feeling. I think it always is a mixture between it, and you're best in when it comes together. I think when your personal feelings correspond to what the audience is feeling, or transmits to what the audience is feeling.
But it really helped me that we were two editors and that we were able to show what we just did to the other. And also we had two assistants who really, did a really great job. And sometimes I had one assistant, Daniela Schramura, who was more like my assistant. And sometimes when I was alone and Maria was working with Hansjörg, I called her into my room and we watched something together, because I feel like at some point I lose my own feeling towards something, or I rearrange it like the 20th time and I lose my initial feeling. Then I need someone in the room, and then I have called her to watch with me. And sometimes she didn't even need to say something, but it helped me feeling her reaction to that. Or I asked Hansjörg to watch something. I just remembered the first time I watched your sequence, I think of Esti and her mother with the gun when she comes to her apartment. And I cried, like I really cried. And I think it helped you, and it also helped me to see, because the emotional impact of my own scenes, sometimes I just lost that impact it had on me in the beginning, and then it helps to watch with someone else.
And also, of course, there are connections to the other episodes, which sometimes on the way gets a little lost when you're just focusing on your own episode, but you have to think everything in the bigger context, of course. So. For example, like the Wannsee scene we might talk about, there is a reference in episode 2, which comes after the Wannsee scene is in episode 1, but there's a reference for that ritual mikvah bath which she's having, preparing for her marriage.
And so the Wannsee scene is the ultimate visualization of her liberation.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the key scene for episode 1, and it's of course one of the key scenes for the whole series. And a lot of things come together there. It's so multi-layered, that scene, and of course it was designed like that, because she. The fact that she comes to Berlin, where the trauma of her community started with the Holocaust, that's very special, of course. And that specific Wannsee scene, that's like Robert points it out, that there was the building where they finally decided on the Holocaust back then, and now everyone is enjoying their spare time, swimming and having fun, like as if nothing had happened. So that is a very difficult perspective for Esti, of course, because there's a lot of feelings involved. She questions, of course, was it right to come here? Is it right to swim in that sea? There are feelings of guilt, of course, involved. But that makes it so difficult and so important and so ritual for her, slowly walking into that water, and with fully dressed, of course, fully dressed, and then finally taking off the wig, which is a symbol, of course, for liberation for her, because they are supposed to wear those wigs in the community. I think this scene is highly emotional, and even with like that there is the other girl who finds the envelope with the photo of the grandmother wearing the wig, and that is intercut into the action when Esti, as the younger generation, finally takes off the wig. So it's present and past, and two different generations involved, and I really like how that scene is built up, because it's so multi-layered.
Are you a musician?
Not like you.
Robert?
I play some piano.
Well, at least you have a wife.
Robert? Hey.
No, it's me. It's safe.
Wait! Shit!
It's nice, right? But did you see that villa? The conference where the Nazis decided to kill the Jews in concentration camps took place in 1942, in that villa.
Can you swim in this lake?
Oh, the lake is just a lake. There's more, actually. When the Berlin Wall was up, East German guards shot anyone who tried to swim across this lake to freedom.
And now?
Now you can swim as far as you like.
You go in. I'll watch everyone's stuff.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Don't worry, I've got it.
Yeah, it's a very, very emotional scene. Also, as the audience, as I received it, you really realize the depth and the trauma and and the huge decision that is being made. And after this, everything changes, right?
Yeah, and interestingly, that came to my mind just yesterday. Originally in the script, that there was an earlier scene with Esti at the music school before they drive to the Wannsee, where she goes into the bathroom and takes off her wig. So, do you remember, Gesa?
No.
Yeah, we had that scene. It was shot and we had it in the cut, and at one point I suggested probably taking the scene out because to give more impact to the Wannsee scene, which is which everybody I think can understand that if the first time when she takes off the wig is in the Wannsee, it's much more powerful than you have it like five minutes before for herself. It was designed like to like a test for herself if she could do it in public, which is also interesting, of course. But film-wise, it's much more powerful to focus it on just one moment.
Yes. So we also often say that the editors, or in the editing process, you write the final story. Actually, this is exactly what happens, right? So you do have the script, you do have the footage of the photographer's work, creative work, and of course the production designer and all the great elements. You received wonderful footage, right? A wonderful story. But then in the end, the final writing is in the editing process.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. I wanted
also,
to...
of course, with sound and music involved. And
I want to actually ask you about how did you work together with the sound and the music? When did you start collaborating with them?
Well, basically the plan was that the composer started quite early in the process. He had some layout tracks composed before shooting, and we worked with those, and then we at a certain point we kept sending back and forth like scenes. The funny thing, for example, with the Wannsee scene was we used a track from his very early recordings, from his first 3 layout tracks, and we thought it worked great, and we were very happy with it. And eventually, in the process, when we sent him the edited scene, and he tried to work a little bit with it, we realized that we were using that theme in a very specific way that highlights the subtext and the multi-layers and the ritual character of it. And it was not so much about the fact, will she go into that lake, like not a suspense thing, but like something higher, like spiritual in a way. And so eventually we ended up more or less with the first layout of the composer like we originally used it in the editing process, and that was a very interesting experience for me. That I don't really know how to explain it, what was different or not, but it it was very clear that one version highlighted more the overall ritual, spiritual character, and the other version highlighted more like the action, probably.
Yeah.
And then that was very interesting to discover what music really does to the very same editing.
Yeah, and I think it really helped that we had these pre-composed, I think it was 10 or 11 tracks.
Could we,
Yes,
could
we
call,
had
the-
the,
could we call these pre-composed, was it like sketches especially created for the story? So he
Yes,
has been reading the script, he didn't see, or did he see the assembly maybe?
No, it
No.
was before that, right? He read the
Yeah,
script.
well, I think part of those tracks was for what he wrote for the interview for getting the job. I think. So basically, I don't even know if he knew the whole script at that time, but probably just the basic storylines. I don't know. And then if in the process, I think he watched the rushes a little bit and composed more. Like it was a process. He had more knowledge of the footage the more he got into the work, of course.
And of course, in this film, there is a lot of different kinds of music. There's like traditional music, or maybe vocals, like the songs that have a very important role. Then you have the classical music in Berlin. And then you have also the very contemporary music in the club. So you had very different elements of music already to work with, and then the film music had to like be balanced around this.
For my episodes, I had the whole club sequence with Catnap. The artist is called Catnap. And they had already had those songs playing in the club. So the dancing and she's performing live. She's performing all the songs live. And there was also a playback behind that, so we could edit that live. And so Maria already decided on what songs they're like for that part of the process.
Maria is very much into music, and she knows a lot. And for example, Catnap, I think it was her suggestion. Basically, we didn't use too much score in the series, and I think that is of course always her approach, that she does only want to use music when she feels she wants to use music. She's not a big fan of underscoring everything. Because the scenes for themselves, like she's an actress also, and she has a lot of knowledge how to deal with the characters and the interaction, and that is her main focus in her work, and music comes on top. And as you pointed out, there's a lot of source music involved, like the classical piece, the Schubert song that is featured in episode 1 with her grandma, and that she's singing in the audition as a first track. And all the songs during the wedding, and also that wedding song that she will finally perform in the audition.
Maybe when you're talking about the wedding scene, maybe we can watch the song in the wedding scene where the whole ritual, where Esti is covered. I wanted to ask you about this scene, Gesa.
Harayat megareishes liebe tabasi kedas moishe veisroel.
Mahayru adu shamali kani shuma bura yidu v'chitzois Yerushalayim koil susain v'koil simchu koil chusan v'koil kalu koil mitzalos chasunim ma'chipusam in yure mimishtaini ginusam buri chatu adoi shem Misamaya chusam nimakalu
Umain.
بتدخل كانوا بيقتلوا بعض بس لازم الاقي له بديل بس وقرروا يعملوا لقاء على 8 يعني مش راح الحق على الفيلم هاي
I already fell in love with the whole sequence when I read it the first time, and I think in the first book, Hansjörg, I don't know if you remember, we experienced the whole wedding like looking out of her veil, like she has the veil over her body, and we, like in the book it read like we only see feet of people all the time, and that of course that wouldn't work very well because it could get boring, but it felt like really intense. It read great. I fell in love with it right away. But like when I saw the first rough cut of the wedding, it was shot like, or in the book, the 4 wedding scenes should have been like one sequence. So it should have been like, I think at about a third of the episode when Esti is in the music school, we went into the past and experienced the whole wedding as one. but the very first rough cut of the wedding was already, I think, 40 minutes long. And the whole episode was supposed to be 50 to 55 minutes. So it was like a kind of like a documentary about a Jewish wedding. And it was really hard because there's so many rituals that happen, which are all holy and really important. And they took so much time and love to unfold all this to be as real as possible. So if you want to shorten that, you have to be like really, really careful not to shorten the wrong things. So we spend a lot of time, especially when you don't understand everything. Like there's stuff that is in Hebrew, there's stuff that is Yiddish, and I don't know, just shorten a prayer and take half of it out, not knowing exactly what they are saying was really hard. And so we were quite sure, or very, very early, quite sure about splitting the wedding and putting it into different spaces of the episode and trying to connect to Esti's present, which I think now works quite well. We also had to shorten it, of course, and also there was the question of when we see her mother, like right before the mother says she was there at the wedding, so we're kind of looking for her. When do we show her? At what point does Esti realize her mother's there? And then, of course, kind of preparing people to know that song she sings in episode 4. Yes. And I'm not sure that everyone gets that watching it the first time, that it's the same song. We're both part of a Facebook group where people discuss about the whole series, which is great. I've never had that chance to like kind of listen into people's experience watching the show.
Yeah, and this is huge. Like it's 4,000 members right now, I think, yeah, or even more. It's really it's amazing, and it's really interesting to
get the feedback from the audience, right?
Yeah. And there are many Hasidic people also in that group, and sometimes they point out what parts are wrong, or since we mentioned the mikvah before, someone said, okay, but she's only going underwater 2 times, which of course is a shortening we did because it was too long and it didn't feel right, but it's like a holy ritual, and we took away one of the 3 drops.
They even shot 3 times. It's not that they inaccurately shot it, but it was an editing decision,
yeah,
to not to tell the whole process. But speaking of the other characters, like for example Yankee, which is the basic side character, of course, we try to not paint him as a villain, because he is not. Like he is also like he has his conditions, of course, from growing up in that community, and that was very important for everything and everybody involved, like Anna Winger, the showrunner and writer, and Maria Schrader, the director. And I specifically like the last dialogue scene between Yankee and Esti in episode 4 at the end of the series, where they did where Yankee asks Esti to come back, and he tells her that he's going to change, and you have the feeling, yes, they could come together in a different world, or if Yankee only had started earlier or at the same time than Esti to understand certain things, and that makes, I think, that the scene so highly emotional, which also turns out to be the case for the audience. I read tons of emails like from people who were crying when they watched the scene, because yes, it touches you so deeply, and that is why this is because of the characters are not painted black and white. It's not like good and evil. It's
very human, very human.
Multi-layered.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first read the script, I was so angry at Yankee. Like, just reading it, I was so angry. And when I saw the material and what Amit did with Yankee as a role, I fell in love with him.
Yeah,
like,
he's
it gets
so
so
amazing.
tragic. When he cuts his pious off, I still cry, like, every time. It just hits me so hard.
Yes, because
That
he
would have been.
he really wants to be different. He really realized that he could be different, right?
No, it would have been easy to paint it more black and white, of course, and but it's much more interesting if you have it yeah, a little more nuanced and detailed. And that of course is a question of editing again, because every single cut you are doing in such a dialogue scene affects like the balance between those two, and you also, if cuts create an opinion and a statement, and you have to be very careful with it and nuanced with all the decisions. But that is something I specifically like working with Maria, because she knows all the implications. She knows so much about editing, and it's a real delight working with her, because she knows about the art so deeply.
Hmm.
So she's someone who can like really go deep into the material. Like, okay, let's change this one. Look at each other. Let's look for the other 3 takes and change this and make this a little longer. Have a longer break. So she's really into the whole timing. I learned a lot from her doing this project. And also at the end of the wedding scene, I don't know if the clip is long enough to show that, but the shaving of the head.
Yeah, maybe we should
that's like
show this.
A perfect example for these timings you have to choose. We decided that the moment we cut from their dance, which is like the closest moment they have together, and they're both happy, you can see it in their faces, they both kind of let all of the problems go at that moment. Esti just forgets that her dad stumbled, and they come really close to each other. And then we decided to cut hard into the shaving of the head, not finishing the sentence of the music at that point. You would kind of expect that the music finishes the sentence and then you cut somewhere else, but we kind of ripped people out of that moment and put them right into the shaving of the head, in a moment where Esti looks like really stressed out. I mean, that's one of my most favorite scenes. They shot that at the very first day of shooting. They shaved her hair. So it was really emotional for everyone, not just for Shira, the actress who plays Esti, but for the whole team. It was like a really emotional moment. And so
it was just one take, of course.
Yeah, one take shot from 2 different angles. So yeah, the fear and all of the emotions are kind of real. Like, she really loses her hair, and we Maria and I decided to take a moment where she already has half of her head shaved off, because you see like her past and her future like in the very first frame, and then her emotions you would expect her to get sadder and sadder, but she kind of gets excited and is happy at the same time. And at the end we cut out of the scene with a blink, which reminds me of a Facebook discussion we just had about a new trend that people are editing right into a blinking of eyes. I did that at this point because she kind of leaves her past behind her. That was what we tried to do. She brings it's the moment when all of her hair, like in the front, is off, and there's just a little hair in the back, but you can already see what it's going to be, and then we edit it into the present and leave her.
Yeah, I don't remember what comes right after the shaving.
We're going to the guys who are searching for her. The first picture is like a train rushing through the picture, which is kind of a hard cut for both picture and sound, which again like rips people from one moment and puts them right into the next one.
How did you work with the language? Did somebody put subtitles, or how did you both work with this different language?
So we had one assistant, Sandra Böhme, the kind of the first assistant, and she subtitled always one of the master clips of the scene. So in the beginning, it's not like the whole cut was subtitled, but there was one master sequence. I think the assembly Hansjörg I took over was subtitled, but of course you kind of you start getting into it. You kind of learn how it sounds, but when you change the clip, or if you use another take, then of course the subtitles are gone. It was kind of crazy at that point, but I feel like you kind of get into understanding it, and it took me some time, but at some point I put the subtitles out, or I didn't use them, and I went just for the rhythm, because at some point you know what they're saying and you don't use them anymore. But then, like, if you put them back on and you realize how fast you edited something and that the pace is like quite high. I had the problem with the beginning of the 2, I think. It's the beginning of the 3, like the sex education scene.
That's a lot of dialogue, of course.
Yeah, that's a lot of dialogue. You have to read it all. You have to understand it. It's like there's some moments that are quite funny that you don't get if you are not a fast reader. So that's a problem if you start editing without them.
But that's also, of course, the subtitles we were using were somehow the transcript from the screenplays. Like we had a version in English and a version in Yiddish, and when I was doing the rough cut, and it's a little bit similar. I did a lot of films in foreign languages, and also in languages I understand not so well than the Yiddish, because with Yiddish there is a lot of resemblance with German, and you relatively quickly know what they are talking. So it was not that much of a challenge. But I basically did the assembly without subtitles, and I was sometimes I was looking something up in the script. But eventually, when you came on board, I think we did subtitle the rough cut as it was at that point. But then sometimes worked without the subtitles again and put it back in place after a while. So it was a little bit of both. And also when we had some screenings, of course, we would have to have those subtitles, and that's probably something we could talk about when we did the deliveries to Netflix. We also had to have subtitles. So that there's a specific plan where when you hand in those deliveries, like the rough cut 1, rough cut 2, stuff like that, you would upload it on the Netflix platform, like the internal Netflix platform, and for those uploads, the film had to be subtitled. Everything which was not in English had to be subtitled, and this was a huge work for our assistants. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of administration involved behind our backs, so it was really great to have Sandra and Daniela on board who did their job so perfectly well that we could concentrate on the editing. Yes, that's but for the editing itself, it was not so difficult. The fact that half of the film has been shot in Yiddish, that came very natural at a certain point.
أبا بيصير جديد شنو غدا رخ داي نخت Ich trying bad. Ich bin sicher, dass du es geschenkt hast, Sachkoppels.
אפשר bist du gerecht.
Schwingen. Ist alles okay?
Die sucht mich.
Janki ist gegangen zu der Arbeit, Mama ist halbe Schuhe zurück.
Ich weiß, hat mich gekalt von der Gas.
Oh.
Sucht, dass kam schon wieder nicht geendigt Nacht bei Nacht.
Janki hat dir so gesagt?
Der Vater, der zahlt mir alles. Ich bin seine Mama.
Sie kommen eine Woche nach der Kasse.
Wie viel Mal hast du getreut?
Ich bin nicht sicher.
Schön. Ich hab dir gebringt etwas, was wird dich helfen.
Was ist das?
Line instructions in der Box. Es wird es machen geringer in jener Platz. Der Riker ist als aus sich ausfigern, fahr, dann kussen und verliert seine Confidence. Verstehst du, was ich rede? Yankee ist sehr sensitiv. Die darfst du machen Film wie...
Ja, König. Ich weiß. Amanda filmen wie ein König im Bett.
Ja, mein Yankee darf allemal filmen wie ein König.
So, du meint, dass ich bin eine Königin?
Sehr schön. Don't disappoint me, Esti.
so Gesa, maybe you can tell more about the editing of this scene.
Maria and I quite spent some time on that scene actually, because I think the first version we had was quite tight, was a quite tight scene, and we worked a lot on the fact. I mean, it's like the major betrayal that Yankee does to Esti. He goes out of the door and calls his mother and tells like all the sexual details, and she comes over and kind of gives it away to Esti right away. So we had to kind of make her reactions a little, I don't know, slower. Like she always needed some time to realize what was just said and then react. So we kind of, I don't know, delayed her reaction a little, sometimes even to points where in the material, Miriam, so her mother-in-law, is still speaking. So we had like, we changed the timing. And the only times Esti reacts fast is when the mother-in-law cites kind of the rules, when she says you have to make him feel like a king. So she's like replying right away because she knows the rules and she wants to show. And then so the mother-in-law is quite fast. We edited her really fast, like being brutal. And Esti is slow in her reaction. And in the end, it kind of shifts. When Esti says, okay, so that makes me a queen, suddenly Miriam doesn't know how to reply and takes a step back and is like, oh, nice presents. And then goes out of the scene with the last threat she makes, but still there's a shift between them in that scene, and we try to emphasize that a lot with editing.
So Hansjörg, I wanted to ask you about the opening scene of episode 4, where actually this whole history, I mean, there are different scenes in the other episodes which are pointing out the trauma, the point of view of these people's perspectives. But I think especially this scene, and also when we see this scene, so it's towards the end where we really understand as an audience like what this is all about or what their story is.
It's a very specific and special view of that specific community, like the Satmar, and it's crucial to understand the community, I think, even if we tell the story of someone who wants to leave the community. But it's all these impacts that are involved, and it's once again, it's not black and white. It's just multi-layered. And what I specifically like about the scene is that Esti leaves the room at a certain point, which is somehow ambiguous because you don't really know why she's leaving, and eventually it turns out that it's the first signs of pregnancy, but it's not clear from the very beginning, and I think that is very clever, and of course we focused also on that during the editing. When is she leaving? How much information do we want in the room? How much information do we give in the kitchen, which is also amazing. This kitchen with covered aluminum foil, it's so special, and we hear from next door the speech going on and the praying and the singing. Yeah, and I like that scene very, very much. Also, all the details with costume and set design. It's really, really amazing.
Nicht Schäferle. Du bist gewinn so excited für dem.
Tate, Lein, ich will bei dir für Kasches freuen. Tate, Lein, ich hab dir gefreit für Kasches, Zamoichel und für meine Teretz.
And the Teretz of them is
Avudim hayini lefaroi b'mitzrayim vayoytzieni Adonai Eloheini misham ve'ilu loi hoytzi hakudosh baruch hu es aboseini misham hareyoni ivonei mishebudim hayini lefaroi b'mitzrayim. Ins der Zeilen fin Jetzias Mitzrayim, sich zu der Mannen von der Zures. Nicht bloß von der Mitzrim, nur euch von der Inquisitie, Chmielnitzki, der Pogromen, der Nazis, ihr Machschemum. Wir halten euch mit euch. Oim dem allein, ihr Lechal euch sein. Wenn uns haben getraut, unser Freund in Schreinem hat der Eibischte ins gestruft. Wenn uns haben getauscht in der Levischen Luschen, hat der Eibischter ins gestruft. Wenn uns vergessen, wer ins Senden bringt man auf sich, der Eibischters Zorn. Wegen dem sitzen wir alle durch Hand. Uns weiß mir, wer wir senden. Und das ist der einzigste Weg, Susanna ben Geuren.
Du weißt, in der Beginning ist es gewesen schwer für mich auch. Aber jetzt, Nummer 5 und 6 kann einer hören. Baruch Hashem.
Ich bin so happy für dich. I'm sorry. Ich brauche ein bisschen frische Luft.
That was funny when doing the series. Somehow I got used to the images. Of course, when viewing the first rushes, I was amazed. But during the process, it became kind of normal in a way, because you're working with the material and seeing all the press coverage now, like the still photography. I realized once again how special this visualization is, and how much incredible work all the crew has done to it, and specifically this scene is like the wedding scene as well. The wedding scene is huge, I think.
I just want to refer to something you just said. Like we had some point when we discussed how much of the very specific rules or symbols or you have to explain, because I know I personally hate when everything is explained to me. I get bored and I don't feel the urge to watch on. And here, especially with the first episode and the Eruv wire, like this wire that surrounds the neighborhood, there was a whole scene to kind of explain what the Eruv is about. And you took that out, and I really loved that this happened, because now you just have to, if it interests you, and you're given a little information about it, you're going to Google it. You're going to do your own research, and you.
this is funny that you mention this specific point, because we had a lot of discussions about that. Can we just put it there like a roof? What is it? I remember when I read the script, I said, a roof, what is that? And I instantly Googled it before I continued reading the script, and you wouldn't do that with a series, of course. And I think it's a daring decision to say, okay, we open up with a shot of a wire, and then a couple of scenes later somebody tells something about a roof and that you can't go out, which is like for someone who doesn't know anything about that community, is really bizarre, I think.
But it worked. I mean, that's the great thing about it. We can now kind of look if people understood it, and there are so many people who don't know a lot about the community who started doing their research and who read.
Actually, it's not the way you usually would do. It's daring to leave that open, or to just put it there without explaining. I was all for it and all supporting the idea not to cut in that explaining scene, which was really like a scene which was not really connected to the rest of the story, and it was like an inserted Wikipedia article. So that was the best decision we could make. But still, I think it's daring, and I love it that it's daring, and also I think it has a certain, you take that community serious, because you don't explain every detail, but you just tell the story that is happening there as it would happen. They talk about the Yeruf like they would talk within themselves, and not for an audience which is listening.
The audition scene is, of course, very important, Hansjörg, also, because as we discussed in the wedding scene, there is this song, and it's forbidden for women to sing.
Yes, that is a huge issue in the series. I was about to mention it earlier. Basically, the real Deborah Feldman has become a writer, and during script writing they changed her passion into music, which I think was a very clever decision, because first, music is more cinematic than writing. Like you would only show something, somebody sitting at her desk and writing. It's not that interesting. But also, and that is the main reason, because the fact that Satmar women are not allowed to perform in public, and this makes that choice with music so special and so imminent to the story, and I also think it was a very clever idea to bookend the series with on the one side the Schubert song and the wedding song as well. So it's two key musical moments from her former life that she remembers during that audition, and finally, well, in the end, we don't tell if she gets that scholarship or not, like if she's successful or not. But, well, it doesn't really matter in a way, because we feel that she will make her way either or. And it would have been somehow ridiculous if she would become a great opera singer overnight, yes. or even more like a great piano player overnight. And that is, once again, I think, a clever decision to not to make her path like without any obstacles. But in the end, I think the idea to feature that song from the wedding is brilliant, because it's not about perfect singing or something like that, but it's about the emotional impact, and she everything reflects for her in this situation, and for the audience as well. We could also like at one point we even thought about it, probably using some flashbacks from the wedding scene, but in the end we thought that might be a little cheesy. But the emotion is all there, and she's performing. Shira Haas is performing brilliantly, incredibly, and she's singing live, and that is so emotional. And also like when the moment when Yankee enters the room, and of course her mother enters the room, and in the beginning Esti doesn't realize that Yankee is there, so it has all those multiple perspectives once again, and it took a while to get it there in the editing, because there were so much issues involved, and the footage was somehow slightly limited, because it was a full shooting day, and all they did a couple of takes on her, of course, in different sizes, but the reactions were somehow limited. They didn't cover everything, like throughout the whole audition, but we just had bits and pieces we could use. And the other thing was they had two alternatives for Yankee coming in during the audition. So we had to keep him isolated from the mother, and there were some points we had to play a little bit with, even to the fact that we did a split screen on a wide shot from the back of the stage, where we see Esti's back in front of the camera, and Yankee coming into the room from the backside. And he came at a different moment than we wanted him to come in. So we did a split screen and shifted that moment.
What will you be singing?
And the Musik by Schubert.
Do we have anybody here who can play that immediately?
Oh, actually, I asked someone.
Whenever you're ready.
You won't mess this up for her, you understand me?
Sie verlangt mit uns. Der Baby auch.
You're not the only one that can make threats.
Oh yeah, I know. I always like that.
Good morning. Get out.
Can you tell us why you chose this song?
My grandmother loved it. It was our secret.
Why a secret?
Well, I come from a community in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, where women are not allowed to sing in public.
Why not?
A woman performing loudly among men is considered to be immodest, even seductive.
Tell us a bit about your education.
I went to school until I was 17.
But you have had no formal musical training.
I didn't have access to proper training of any kind. But for the past 3 years, a musician living in a building that belongs to my grandfather gave me piano lessons in exchange for rent. This was also a secret. I mean, my husband knew, but he didn't approve.
Miss Shapiro, how old are you?
19.
The piece you chose is really better for soprano voices, not mezzo-sopranos like your own. Maybe there's another piece you could sing?
Miss Shapiro? Have you prepared another piece? It would be nice to hear something different.
Okay. Okay. Mi bon siach shoishan choichim ahavas kalu mesois doidim mi bon siach shoishan choichim ahavas kalu mesois doidim mi bon siach shoishan choichim ahavas kalu mesois doidim mi bon siach shoishan choichim ahavas kalu mesois doidim Yevuraich esechuson v'yeves hakalu Yevuraich esechuson v'yeves
Don't keep your phone club waiting.
Did you work on a series like this before, or is it similar to a film? Because it's a mini series, it's not a very many episodes, so it's almost like a film.
To me, it was quite similar to working on a film, or sorry, I'm working on like two little films that are connected to other ones that Hansjörg was editing. But the difference for me was that we weren't able to to work on a full episode from the beginning to the end, but we had to switch like week-wise. So I was working on episode 2 for 1 week, then episode 3, then on 2, then on 3. So you always had to switch between the connections you make. I don't know, when you watch material, to me it always feels like you gather all those little threads and you hold them in your hands and you start working with them. But if it gets too many, or there are different ones coming in, you have to let go of the old ones. So for me, sometimes it felt hard to reconnect to that every time. But I know that Hansjörg has not so many problems with that, because he's working sometimes on several projects at the same time. So I'm not used to that.
Yeah,
but from that, it was quite similar.
But that again is a completely different experience, because there you work with completely different footage, completely different styles and stuff like that. I did one series before with Hans Christian Schmid, like I think 3 or 4 years ago, which was a 4-parts limited series as well, like basically more or less the same, a little longer. But what it made different from a normal feature film was that we didn't really have the time to view everything in one go. We had just one screening relatively at the end, but that was something we always had to imply in our works and to think about very thoroughly, not to lose any aspect that is overlaying all the episodes. And but since we had some screenings for respective episodes, you were constantly reminded what else is there in the other episodes, and I think we managed perfectly without more full screenings, because once again, Maria is a really great director who thinks of everything, and Anna, the showrunner as well. She created the show and she knew exactly all the overlaying aspects of it. So that was okay. But
so how long did you work on in total?
Well, I think, if I remember well, I had like 12 weeks during shooting. They had, I think, like 50 days of shooting spread on 12 weeks, like with traveling. They had like 3 or 4 days in New York, so there were some travel days involved. But for me, it was like 12 weeks for the assembly rough cut of all 4 episodes, and then Gesa and I had another 12 weeks each for 2 episodes each. I think it was doable. but of course, given the quality and also all the scenes that weren't scripted normally, like the big wedding scenes or so, where they shot it like basically like a documentary, and you would have create something from it. It was still a tough schedule, yes.
Yeah, to me it felt a little more tight, I think. Just a little. But I mean, you're never done. It's never perfect. You always feel like you could have needed one week more. So maybe that's just this kind of thing.
Yeah, I always tend to call it like it's a perfectionist performance. So it's like, this is the version, but if you could do it tomorrow, it would be maybe a little bit more perfect even, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think there will be another series of this, or does this story continue? Would you like to work on more? Because I think the audience definitely would love to see more, right, of this story. Is there more story in this, or is it a good ending?
But actually, I would love to do a second season, definitely. Especially now, realizing what an impact that show has, and that was something that blew me away. It was for me. It was the first time I was working for Netflix, and also like for a global streaming player, and I wasn't really aware of the impact a show like this could have, because basically it's not like a major Netflix series. It's a German Netflix production, and having now all this feedback from all over the world, it's really amazing, and there are really a lot of people who want to have a second season, and basically Deborah has wrote another book, so that there is definitely that there are a lot of possibilities to do a second show, like either based on Deborah's second book or something different, but as far as I know, I haven't spoken with Anna recently. I just read in an interview that she has decided not to do a second season because she feels that the story is told. But that was like, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe. That is changing.
Change. Yeah. Might change. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me too, I would of course love to work on a second season, but I also I personally like when things come to an end. And if you have like the urge to see more, but there's not going to be more, that's going to stay in your brain as something.
The ultimate longing for.
And sometimes that's more in your head than a second season that might not be as you would have expected. I don't know. But I don't know.
That doesn't mean that a second season would come to an end.
Okay. This is how it works with series, right?
Well, let me just say that to finish. It's also a great teamwork. That is something I think we both experienced working on Netflix, on that Netflix series. That it's really a different thing and a nice thing to have a partner, like an editing partner, to discuss things with, which is so different from how directors normally communicate. In this specific case, Maria is more or less an editing partner as well, because she knows really a lot. But with Gesa, it was so special being able to discuss with someone who knows what you're talking about. Yeah. And that was something I enjoyed very much working on that show.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I enjoyed very much to talk with you. And I hope we can meet at the Edumotion in October.
Are you going to be there?
Yes, I was there last year, so I hope
I'm going to be as well.
I hope it can happen this year. Let's see how things are going. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all the work, for the interest in our work, and for your engagement for editing in general. That
Yeah.
I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.